Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here, and welcome back to more Age of Sigmar lore. In this video, I will be talking about the Lumineth Realm Lords. Before I begin, if you want more Age of Sigmar lore videos, check out my channel and other videos. I would be grateful if you liked, commented, and subscribed, as well as shared this video. My purpose is to prove that Age of Sigmar is more than just the game that killed Warhammer Fantasy. The Lumineth Realm Lords are the armies of elves that worship the twin gods, Tyrion and Teclis. Lumineth means light elf because, luminescence. The creation of these light elves was a miracle, for reasons the twin gods refused to speak of. When the world that was destroyed, most elf souls were consumed by Slaanesh, the chaos god of excess. At first, Teclis found himself alone in the realm of light, eventually encountering his brother Tyrion. Then, they set out to the other realms, particularly to the sister realm of Hyash Ulgu, the realm of Shadow. There, they found two other beings, elves they knew from the world that was, their ancient enemies Malarian, the Shadow King, and his mother Morathi, who was no goddess, but a broken woman whose beauty was distorted to become a snake-like creature. On neutral ground, located at Shyish, the four met and devised a plan to trap Slaanesh. Even though they hated one another, all of them wanted to save their people from the Gauntlet of the Dark Prince. By enlisting the aid of Sigmar and Nagash, Tyrion, Teclis, and Malarian, with the aid of Morathi, were able to trap Slaanesh in Ulgish, a sub-realm of Twilight between Hyash and Ulgu. But Morathi warned them that Slaanesh will one day be free. So, without wasting any time, they started extracting as many elf souls as possible. Afterwards, while Morathi and Malarian labored independently to create their own elves, using their divine essence to create their own. The first time resulted in failure. These generation of elves were flawed, their souls slowly withering away back to Slaanesh. Teclis wanted to kill them. Tyrion convinced him to spare them. Catching wind of their creator's intent, these elves took with them the Okarian Lantern, the artifact that the twin gods used to siphon souls from Slaanesh's belly to avoid detection, and deep into the oceans of the mortal realms. After them, the twin gods created the Lumineth, the light elf. They do not have the Idoneth's condition. They taught these light elves everything they knew. Tyrion taught them the paths of the warrior, the athlete, and the pioneer. Teclis taught them philosophy, magic, and magicraft. During the Age of Myth, the Lumineth founded empires across the 10 paradises. The search for wisdom became key to their culture. When the Age of Chaos first began, the twin gods isolated themselves and believed that they would be safe. But they didn't see how Lumineth societies were rotten to the core, which was prepared by their ancient enemy. What started as jabs between nobles had turned into accusations of slander and treachery. This is one of the many examples one could give for the start of the Okari Dara or the Spirefall. Avercourt, the realm stone of Hyash, was abused excessively, reacting to emotions which the elves experience on a higher intensity than humans do. Was also used in battles, alongside ancient weapons, and this wounded the realm, and from these tears in reality came the demons of Slaanesh. As the Spirefall raged on, Teclis disappeared, only to return a month later with a magical creature by the name of Selenar, which is the spirit of Hyash's true moon. Teclis returned to his worshippers with a revelation that the ultimate goal of the Light Elves was not personal enlightenment, but mastery over their surroundings. Cooperating with the spirits of Hyash, these geomantic entities would become their guides not through domination, but coexistence. The Lumineth, inch by inch, started to take back their realm and focused on purifying it, removing chaos corruption. By waging war, etching giant runes onto the surface of the realm itself. This was referred to as the Reinvention Wars. Some weight was lifted off their shoulders when Sigmar's tempest broke upon the realm of light, and the twin gods quickly aligned themselves with order. But even then, the Lumineth were slow to trust the others after 5 centuries of infighting. Then, the Soul Wars happened. However, Teclis in his infinite wisdom suspected that Nagash was planning something, and ordered his followers to erect aether quartz obelisks nearby realm gates that were known to lead to Shyish. It paid off. Shyish was the realm that endured the Necroquake more efficiently. Not only that, it was the Lumineth realm lords that fought the Ossiarch Empire tooth and nail to inspire hope to the other realms, and the Lumineth's Pyrrhic victory that ended the Soul Wars. After Teclis and the Lumineth realms recovered from war, Teclis went to his old confidant, Alariel the Everqueen, and proposed a right of life in response to Nagash's Necroquake. Alariel sang a beautiful song that even the Lumineth were impressed by, as the mortal realms mostly recovered from the Necroquake, and the still wounded Archmage finally fully healed both in body and spirit. But nothing is ever easy. The Right of Life had awoken Kragnos, the ender of empires, and drove the forces of destruction into a frenzy. After this, the avian heads of the disciples of Tzeentch reared their ugly heads towards the realm of life. Slaanesh might be the Lumineth's ancient enemy, but Tzeentch's unpredictable, chaotic flow of insanity is an anathema to the reason the Lumineth seek. So, they are waging war on 2 fronts, Slaanesh and Tzeentch, while restricting access to geomantic nodes and will even fight their allies over it. They simply refuse to explain why they do it, and it makes them look aloof and arrogant. Meanwhile, the Light Elves believe in their heart of hearts that if the others, especially humans, understood how high risk, high reward some of these nodes were, they could not resist the temptation to exploit them without triggering something similar to the Spirefall. You know, tears in reality that allows demons in. The Tzeentchian cultists increasing tensions between the forces of order and the Lumineth doesn't help the situation. Things like this are what turned Shyish from a realm of symmetry to a war-torn, broken utopia. To make amends, they reclaim their lost empires inch by inch and searing runes upon the realm to keep the corruption at bay and undoing corruption by erecting shrines on floating isles and using their power. Now, what are these runes? These are runes that comprise of the alphabet of the Lumineth language, all of them tracing their origins back to the world that was. However, their original meaning were lost to time. They can be found on the war gear of Light Elf armies, their banners, and various spells they use, mainly to cleanse corruption. These runes, at least the ones we know of, are Thalari, Oreali, Alaithi, Yingra, Senlui, Senthoi, Yudriliki, Miniath, Thanlui, Sendai, Yulvan, Varinor, Sevir, and Kur. Thalari is a rare symbol that symbolizes Zenith, the arcane world above the clouds. This symbol is taboo, and is only used by those who have reached some sort of personal enlightenment, for not everyone is given permission to use this rune. Oreali symbolizes a specific type of wind, the one that is unpredictable and furious as a hurricane. It is one of many runes symbolizing the wind. This one happens to be most used to gain the Zephyrus elementals of Shyish, and is the premier rune amongst the Hurakan temples. Alaithi is the symbol of mountain and stone, the immovable object. It is unsurprisingly most used by the mountain nations of Ymetrica and the Alarif Elementary Temple. Yungra means to rescue and to imprison. This paradoxical rune was integral to the imprisonment of Slaanesh, and it might be why it is not a matter of if Slaanesh escapes, but when. This is why it is impolite to display this rune in public except when conjuring a Sanctum of Amitok spell, a barrier of light that protects the caster from their foes. Saint Louis means swiftness and accuracy. The Vanari are particularly known to use this rune, even if they have permission to display other runes on their armor. This rune generally symbolizes the Vanari war hosts as a whole, an elegant, lethal force shaped in the form they are by the decree Tyrionic. Synthoi means loyalty and unity, but also broken promises. It is a rune conjured to appease the parts of the realm that has been most brutally tortured by the tears in reality. Yidriliki is the symbol of the river. It epitomizes quick thinking, adaptability, and dexterity. Techlian nations tend to use this more as artisans use this as inspiration, and this rune is also used to mark a location believed to hold great potential, especially if there is fresh water nearby. Miniaf is the rune of skill at arms and spirituality, something the Light Elves hold in high regard. The Vanari of the Techlian nations and their Blade Lords hold this rune in high regard. It also symbolizes a lost way. Particularly, it refers to ancient wisdom of the Elven empires that was lost with the world that was. Van Louis is a rune with the meaning of injustice, imbalanced scale, and cruel necessity. It had taken a grim meaning during the Soul Wars, for Nagash wants to create an imbalance with life and death, thanks to the Shyish Nadir, most used to cleanse death corruption from the realm of light. Sendai means dedication and sacrifice. There is another meaning of this rune that few dare speak of: embittered resentment. This rune has been adapted as an icon to the powerful elven mages that are tasked with periodically checking Slaanesh's prison to make sure that the metaphysical bindings are still there. These runes give me all sorts of red flags. I'd almost call it foreshadowing. Yovlan is one of the perfect examples of how a Lumineth rune can have multiple meanings. On one hand, it means honor and pride in moderation. On the other hand, it means arrogance and inherent imperfection. This dual meaning has made it synonymous with the Age of Myth and a signifier of the Spirefall. Varinor is the rune of strength, fire, and the pride of drakes. The Tyrionic nations tend to use this more, as during his early days in the realm, Tyrion had encountered the spirit of blinding elemental light, and during the Burning Rim of Hyash, those who bear these runes are said to hold a special affinity with sun metal and create weapons and wonders of blazing solar power. Severe, like Aureali, symbolizes wind, but Severe is a wrathful wind, for it is associated with the winds of the lordly desert wind Sevireth. The most battle-hungry Hurakans employ the rune freely, and this rune has also been banned by several floating colonies of Helon, for the fear of stirring angry zephyrs, so it is only used to channel the aid of the wrathful wind and the more wrathful Zephyrus elementals of Hyash. There is finally Cool, and it symbolizes decay and rebirth. It is the cycle of life and death, and this rune is set to shut down Nurglite corruption. It can also sometimes be used to symbolize Gyron, the realm of life itself, and has seen an increase in usage since the Rite of Life. Now, onto the combat doctrine of the Lumineth warhosts. They are highly organized, and the composition of the warhosts symbolically reflects Hyash. All aspects of the realm of light are reflected in a warhost, so even their armies are organized like a masterpiece, not just of a commander but of a virtuoso, as their troops use Aether Quartz to enhance their abilities. Lumineth warhosts can be visualized using the runic mandala known as the Hyash Mensa. Tyrion and Teclis have long adopted the sigil for its resonance with their sovereign realm, and only by seeing the bigger picture can one see the true meaning of it. It is divided into two parts, left and right aspect, the Tyrionic and the Teclian. The Tyrionic aspect is also the realm itself, and its symbolism is heliocentric. The Teclian half of the Mensa embodies reflection, refinement, and deliberation. The four Tyrionic nations have always produced the greatest of athletes, explorers, and warriors. Decisiveness and courage are seen as virtues, while rashness and foolhardy pride are seen as vices. Within a war host, the Tyrionic aspects manifest themselves as skilled infantry, cavalry, and commanders that reflect the Lord Phoenix's values. From the Teclian nation, the greatest Haitian thinkers, craftsmen, and mages of the Lumineth are produced. In the Lumineth war hosts, they are represented by the Scinari mage caste as well as the Elementary temples. Meanwhile, the runes of the four Elementary temples, Wind, Mountain, River, and Zenith, are blended as one within the heart of the Mensa. This is to emphasize that the two hemispheres complete one another, just as the Vanari warhosts and the Scinari mages complete one another, just as how the Lord Phoenix completes the Archmage. Hyash is a symmetrical realm where there is Zinfil in the middle, while the other continents surround it symmetrically, with Hysia being a circular continent comprised of islands that border on the realm's edge. Each of these continents are a nation of their own. The most known nations are Ymetrica, Syar, Iliatha, Zaitrec, Alumnia, and Helon. Ymetrica is the continental nation of mountains and chasms, introspection and self-reliance being virtues. They were the first to receive the Reinvention and pride themselves with the bonds they have made with the mountain elementals, believing that the higher one rises, easier enlightenment becomes, which is why they like building their cities at the peaks, carve it into the mountains, and even around them. Believing that the higher one rises, easier enlightenment becomes, which is why they like building their cities at the peaks and around the mountains. So, for the Ymetricans, asceticism is a way of life. Alarith Elementary are usually rare, as it is hard to get the mountain elementals to comply to do literally anything due to how old and ponderous they are. Comparatively, Ymetrica has more of these than the other nations, which is why they prefer to sport triangular motifs on their armor. While most live with their homes artistically carved into the mountains, those who live on the ground level are the farmers tilling the fields. Syar is a nation that is known to craft the best artifacts of the Lumineth, as well as the worst weapons that make the Spirefall as bad as it was. Syarians hold form and function to be equal, and unlike most, they are fascinated with the smithcraft of other species. They hold contests for the others to display their skills in smithing, ranging from a dwarf craftsman displaying Grumrill to a Sylvaneth displaying Iron Oak. Their capital are Eneskoff, being a wonder that is run by solar-powered automata, protected by a mystical shield. During the Age of Myth, they crafted weapons of vast destruction, which was heavily abused during the Spirefall, where other nations attacked Syar for them, and during the Civil War it completely devastated the continent and killed a lot of Syar's population. During the Reinvention, Syar isolated themselves from the trauma, vowing to never craft weapons of mass destruction again, until Teclis convinced them to join the war effort after an intense debate. But even now, they pour most of their efforts into art. On the battlefield, they blur the line between ostentation and humility. They look fancy and all and make their enemies think they are all arrogant and prissy, feinting mistakes and then retaliating with devastating counterattacks. Currently, Syar is trying to fight off the disciples of Tzeentch that are trying to pry into long-forgotten vaults filled with relics from the Spirefall and the Age of Myth. Then there is Iliatha. They are a unique brand. They are matriarchal and they revere Alariel the Everqueen less than the twin gods. Iliathans are also peculiar with that they have identical doppelgangers where they are essentially one soul controlling two bodies. Back during the Age of Myth, some started to see childbirth as crude and decided to clone themselves again and again and again. But since the process splits one's soul, the more you do it, the weaker the soul becomes. Those that did started doing certain activities, which was one of the things that led to demons invading Hyash. What happened during the Spirefall is called the Demise by Iliathans, a traumatic incident shrouded in mystery that they refuse to speak of to outsiders. All that is known is that it resulted in only being allowed to have one clone after a reinvention. During wartime, the original and the clone will fight in the same warhost under different roles, just as during peacetime, the clone pursues different fields than the original. In combat, they will fight in perfect unison, as they are one mind in two bodies. Ever since the era of the Beast, the Realm Gates in Iliatha have been spewing out hordes of orcs and ogres. Although Iliatha has so far resisted all of the waves, the forces of destruction show no sign of stopping. The government is considering to lift the ban on excessive cloning, but this seems like a Faustian deal. Then there is Zaitrec, which houses the best mages of the 10 Paradises. As the continent is potent with the winds of magic, the other nations see them as moon-touched, as the moons of Hyash blesses the nation in the most. The Zaitreci see the satellites as omniscient spirits that will grant wisdom if asked the right questions. Zaitrec is Teclis's favorite nation, as he can be oftentimes sighted wandering the vales of Zaitrec. Zaitrec are rather open-minded about the study of all magic, as they even study things like necromancy, only to contain and fight against it. However, two lores of magic are forbidden to study without exception. Any lore that originates from the realm of chaos, and the lore of the Bad Moon, as the Zaitreci see the malicious celestial body as an anathema to their way of life. The goblins in turn hate the Zaitreci and the moons they worship equally as the light of Hyash itself, and have been going through a goblin problem since the era of the Beast.
Of course!
The nation of Alumnia is known for their recklessness and seeking enlightenment in the most dangerous places, such as Hyja, the lands located at the realm's edge. They have the nickname of the Indomitables, for they have a wanderlust on par with ogres, as they grow up listening to the tales of how Tyrion wandered the realm of light, slew god beasts located at Hyja, sailed across the Luminaris Sea, plunged into the depths of the Tanuir Trench, how he climbed the summit of Mount Avalonor, and defeated the aberrations of the deserts for the first elves to settle. As one can tell, they are a Tyrionic nation. They embody the ideals of Tyrion. They prefer swordsmanship over sorcery, action over contemplation. This is why they are eager to go out into the wilderness and reclaim their home. For Alumnia is an unforgiving land. Most people prefer to live deep within forests and near cliff sides, as cities are scarce. Self-reliance is seen as a virtue, and kids must either adapt during youth or die in the attempt. Some elves follow in the footsteps of the Lord Phoenix and roam Hyja. Here's the problem with this. Hyja is filled to the brim with the Hedonites of Slaanesh, particularly the Godseekers, the warbands that search for their lost god at the edges of the mortal realms, particularly in the realm of light. which Hyjah are a connection of islands that surround the Ten Paradises. So going to Hyjah to wander is a suicide mission at best, and a death warrant at worst. But those who live to tell the tale return with their senses heightened. Some go searching for geomantic nodes, some go to expeditions to Ulgu for reasons Tyrion will not elaborate on, and even when they die, their souls will wander on the floating isles of Shyish. The Alumnians get along very well with the Sigmarites, helping their Dawnbreaker crusades as their armies carve runes upon the land and retake their cities. Finally, there is Helon that we know of, which is a land of fierce winds. They are highly competitive and are surprisingly humble. Despite looking like braggarts at first glance, they will train 100 times harder when they are defeated fairly. Helon is the favorite nation of Tyrion. It is a savanna, the continent I mean. The wind spirits usually refuse to work with the elves, and point at the corrupted mess the Spirefall left behind. But ever since the Lumineth have been restoring the realms, some spirits have agreed to cooperate with them. Helonites construct outposts and windmills on floating archipelagos, and they are all nomadic. Even the capital, Lysaphronia, the Singing Spire, is nomadic. They use these floating isles to initiate their famous races where they have to trust the wind to carry them, while using foul wings, using anti-gravity charms, etc. To the point, almost every Helon regent has been a winner of these sky races at least once. In battle, they especially focus on bowmanship. They are the best marksmen in the Ten Paradises, as none can escape their almost unnatural aim. However, Helon and the continent seem to have a Bellacore problem. Wow, I didn't expect the Lumineth to have much as lore to cover. Well, onto the units, starting with the leaders. Vanari Lord Regions are the commanders of the war hosts. Their authority comes from the twin gods, and they have near limitless power, ranging from vetoing invasions to mustering hundreds of warriors. However, they have no official seat in a great nation's rulership. The Lord Regions are simply proxies of Tyrion. Most Lord Regents are Grand Admiral Thrawn. They are the most talented and genius battlefield tacticians that you will ever fight alongside or against. But they are absolutely oblivious in politicking and intrigues, so you have to delegate these tasks to those who understand while they focus on what they know best, war. For they are influenced by the Decree Tyrionic. They focus on decisiveness and action, measuring twice before cutting once. To become a Lord Regent, you must follow in Tyrion's footsteps and go to Hyjah, return enlightened, and survive the hordes of Hedonites roaming the Twin Gods' forsaken lands. Some return with enlightenment, others return with a light courser. This creature is a swift-footed beast that never sits still even when it's resting, and it hates standing idle, which is why when not at war, these creatures are released. However, when a Lord Regent gives the clarion call, they return with their loyalty intact to do battle. The impact of a light courser is large, and you also have to deal with the elf riding it. Then there are the Vanari Dawn Riders, which are cavalrymen that pick their steeds in Zinthil. They are not just your average equine. These are intelligent, and they choose who they allow to mount them to battle. When a mutual agreement is reached, the elf rests their head against the steed's back and thinks until mutual agreement strikes. They do not name them prematurely. This allows them to move in unison, to share a mutual bond that allows them to traverse danger and have fewer incidents of these steeds casting their elven riders off the saddle for self-preservation. When a Dawn Rider charges, they are the spearhead. To break the enemy lines, the hammer to break the enemy upon the anvil of the Lumineth warhost. Then there are the Vanari foot soldiers, such as the Arlan Wardens. They are the master of close order formation, the unbreakable phalanx, which signifies that the Spirefall will never happen again in their iron discipline. The Wardens live and die as a single entity, as they thrust their spears in unison against the enemies, piercing hearts and impaling bodies. Their spears are made of sun metal, crackling with the energies of the realm of light, melting enemy weapons and armor like wax when they utilize Aether Quartz to empower it. Aurelin roughly translates to luminous in Azerite. Then there are the Aurelin Sentinels, which are the bowmen of the Vanari hosts, who are such great marksmen that melee rarely becomes a necessity. They have developed three-stringed bows that essentially allows them to fire in different modes, either towards distances not thought possible by those ignorant, or as straight and impactful as a crossbow. Then there are the Vanari Blade Lords, which are the champions of the Vanari. They sound the charge and lead the vanguard. However, these champions are walking contradictions. They might as well be partly truth and partly fiction. They adhere to the Decree Tyrionic, but are seen guarding the spires and symposiums of Teklian nations, acting as bodyguards to the Scinari mage caste and have Scinari runes etched upon their armor. They are taught by the Scinari that war is not just an art, but a complex equation that must be solved to achieve victory, turning these Tyrionic champions into philosophers. Their lightweight greatswords tuned perfectly for riposts and chopping off heads. Finally, there are the Starshard Ballistas, which, as you can tell, are ballistas. But these ballistas are operated by expert marksmen and are essentially the giant crossbow equivalent of the Sentinel's multi-stringed bow. These are commonly operated by siblings and lovers, and in the case of Iliathans, oftentimes operated by doppelgangers. The ammo they fire act both as a weapon, a flashbang to the enemies, and a flare for the Sentinels to fire their arrows. Those were the Vanari. Now onto the Scinari. Starting with the Enlighteners, they are philosophers and mages. Whereas a normal wizard would use the Winds of Akshi to cast a fireball, an Enlightener seeks more subtle ways to use the Winds of Magic, such as using runes to empower their allies subtly. Underneath this restraint is a desire to unleash a torrent of magic, as if the realm of light itself is lashing out in agony. The Scinari Caligraves are the reason why there are runes etched upon the realm of light. For them, the quill is quite literally more powerful than the sword, as they use liquid light magic that they siphon from Aether Quartz to manifest giant runes that empower nearby allies and seal gateways to the realm of chaos. This discipline originates from Syar, who found the way to bind arcane energy onto parchment. Then other Caligraves discovered that this can be used for nullification, so it can also be used to dispel and erase an enemy from existence. Then there are the Lore Seekers, whom embody both the Tyrionic and the Teklian decrees. In other words, they are Eclipsians. They seek knowledge and martial strength, and expand their lore of magic. Due to their prowess, they are highly valued in Lumineth society and by the war hosts, and like an Eclipse, they have their darker aspects. They contain what must not be taken and or learned, and should it fall into even their allies, they act the role of thieves and assassins. Now we move on to the foot soldiers of the Scinari, starting with the Elementary Temple's warrior ranks, the Alar of Stoneguard. They are rare, for it is difficult to get the mountain spirits to cooperate. During the Spirefall, they grew jaded and cynical towards the Elves, and only through decades of restoration and war against chaos have the Light Elves been able to regain the trust of these mighty spirits. The trials to become a Stoneguard vary. Some must fast at the peak of a mountain, others must run alongside rockfalls. The climax of their trial is to be buried alive. Those who are worthy can breathe through the cracks, while those unworthy get crushed to death. Those who succeed after re-emerging as a reborn. So the Alarith will don a ritual helm honoring the Ymetrican Longhorns, partially because Ymetrica have more of these than the other nations. For weapons, they take flat-faced hammers or diamond-cord mattocks. They are rock, they are unbending, but they cannot be broken. They cannot be shaken. The only earthquake on the battlefield is them. Then there are stone mages, whom are the masters of earth magic. They started a tenuous relationship with the mountain spirits, only for said spirits to truly understand them later. The spirits granted them the secrets of geokinetic and lithomantic sorceries. In other words, gravity magic meets rock. For reference, you can use the gravity magic in Elden Ring, but aside from that, they can petrify enemies, grant their allies stone skin, and they speak with the commanding rumble of an avalanche. During desperate times, the elementary temples call upon the mountain spirits and carve a war form out of stone. These giant golems bear aver cords and wield giant hammers. But here's the catch: it is very difficult to do the mountain elementals to do anything. But when they are persuaded to take on the war forms, they oblige eagerly and are one of the best allies you can have. However, they have a very high upkeep. Their form has their own ecosystem, as their sun metal bits are cooled off using streams and lakes of mountains. Their core is their mask, in the visage of a longhorn. And to top it all off, mountain spirits are proud entities, and you have to try your best to not offend them. Then there are the supplicants of the Hurakan temples, such as the Hurakan wind charges. They, like all of the Hurakan temples, form a bond with the Zephyrus spirits of Hyash to become one with its winds. Their soul is like that of it, a calm wind or a chaotic cyclone or a raging gale. To become a wind charger, you must first learn how to levitate after extensive meditation and reach the temples of the Hurakan. They must become one with the currents until accepted, and if they are spurned, they just fall to their deaths. If they live, they become warrior monks with the creed of one arrow, one kill. Thanks to the wind spirits, their marksmanship is unnatural, as their arrows essentially just take turns and slip through narrow entrances, finding their target to be the throats or chests of the enemy. Aside from that, the Wind Chargers make pacts with tree runners, Haitian beasts that revel in chasing the winds to help them continue with the wind's pace. Then there are the Wind Mages, which form the upper echelons of the Hurakan temples. One becomes a Wind Mage when one receives symbiosis with their Wind Patron. So in tune are the two that they think that even walking is wrong, and they are better off levitating. They use the wind to trick the enemy, to suppress shouted orders, and fill lungs with so much air that they burst, etc. Finally, the wind spirits also have their own battle form that the Hurakan temples use. To do this, the wind mages soothe the wind spirits that have turned cruel following the events of the Spirefall. Their masks modeled after a horned fox. They are easily distracted, speedy, and don't want to be bogged down in close combat, so they wield colossal longbows into battle. By the way, these things are so fast that despite their size, they can traverse fairly large distances in the blink of an eye. Well, this is it. Again, I did not expect the Lumineth to be as detailed as much as this. Well, anyways guys, this is going to be it for this video. I am the Nameless Scholar, and never forget the Spirefall. It just seems that elves and arrogance go hand in hand.